Welcome to the Music Education Podcast. I'm Chris of the Chris Woods Groove Orchestra, and this podcast is brought to you by Charanga. In this episode, I chat with Jamie King of the Absolute Music Trust. The Absolute Music Trust enriches people's lives through musical activities, and our conversation is inspired by the wonderful stuff that they do. In fact, you'll join our chat just as Jamie is explaining the work they do with the NHS around mental health. It's all really fascinating and really positive. And the conversation very much zooms out and takes a look at musical culture, or maybe even culture as a whole, particularly focused around the UK. It's really thought-provoking stuff. I hope you enjoy listening. Complex one, but I just...
No, I mean, so the main thrust of that work is with adults with mental health. So people who've got a condition, either bipolar, schizophrenia, they've been hospitalised for their own safety or the safety of others. It's quite cold-face, acute work. And often with these people, the conditions can be managed well. The whole direction of travel at the moment within society is to move a lot of well-being practice into the community. So this is about, some of it's about pounds and pence and saving money. So I'll give you an example. A psychiatric bed costs approximately £750 a night in this country, give or take a few quid. So that's the on costs, the occupational therapists, the doctors, the nurses, the heating, the lighting, all of the stuff that goes into keeping a hospital bed open. If you're then able to get the people out of the hospital beds and support them in a community in a way that stops them relapsing or potentially having a serious episode again, and that saves an awful lot of money long term. And it's not just the music that does that. The music's part of a much more holistic package these days. A lot of this kind of work is now looking at woodland bathing and yoga and meditation, exercise, good diet, all the stuff that we know is good for us. And I'm just a very small part, or the charity are playing a very small part in that much bigger jigsaw. But it's also really being recognised as quite often a building block for some of the other activities that keep people well. We know that when people engage in regular music making, we exercise a part of the brain that nothing else touches. We know that we're getting results in other areas. So people are reporting back, this makes me feel better. I hallucinate less when I'm playing my guitar, whatever it is for the individual. So it's really exciting work, and we're at the start of a 10-year plan for the NHS at the moment. This is very much the direction of travel, partly because it's broken, the system's broken, a bit like I talked about the youth service not having money to deliver activities for young people anymore. It's the same with the NHS. The demand is great, but the money's not there. So we have to find more creative ways and in my opinion, more practical and, dare I say, spiritual ways. I don't want to sound all foo-foo la-la about it, but yeah. I do.
Foo-foo la-la, I like that. I'm going to use that. I usually go with fluffy. But Jamie, I think largely music ed conversations tend to be skirting around using that word. Spirit, because ultimately that's what the musical experience kind of is, isn't
we
it?
Can't quite define it. There's a lot of evidence to say that it's very, very good for us. But when you start using terms like spiritual, you're right. It makes it feel a bit tricky.
I think it's harder, and music teachers that who are listening to this will be very familiar with that battle of trying to sort of fight their corner for their funding or their part in the timetable. And, the science teacher is using hyper rational financial language as well, and then the music teacher's saying, well, yeah, we're just going to get together, we're just going to sing some songs and everyone just had a really great time. And then the head teacher's like, well, yeah. And it's a kind of a wider, which is very exciting that you're working with a body like the NHS and they're seeing the value in what you're doing.
Yeah, very much so. They're very supportive at the moment. And do you know what? People, it's very easy to sort of slag off organisations like the NHS or local authorities or the government, whatever it is. It's very easy to sit back and just say, oh, they're rubbish at what they do. But honestly, 99% of the occupational therapists that I've worked with have been amazing. They go to extraordinary lengths to support people who can at times be quite tricky. And some of the management that I'm now meeting to set up projects and talk about this, creative health and well-being, they're really progressive. They're really they want the best for their peeps, and they really do extraordinary work. So, I'm not one of those guys who. I'm a big fan of where we're going. There's a need to do it in a cost-effective way, which I understand the logistics of that. But it's very exciting working with the NHS at the moment. I'm really privileged to do some of the work we do, and I don't use that term lightly, privileged, because the relationships that we forge with people. It is a privilege to work with these guys. So to be a trusted adult and somebody who helps make somebody else's life a bit better it's a lovely place to be. So like I said at the beginning, the fact that my boss puts money in my bank account is a blessing. It's an extra bonus, isn't it?
It's a bonus.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it, that music is being used, it's the phrase curatively, it's being used to essentially almost like cure an ailment, I suppose,
or help in that respect. Yes, certainly. I don't think it's a one pill kind of activity, but it's certainly something that makes a difference for some people. It might not work for everybody, because there might be people who are much more into, other art forms, pottery, art, whatever it might be. I was just going to go and say that I do tend to encourage songwriting with a lot of my own practice, because it's not technically music therapy, but it's certainly very therapeutic. So I work with other clients who find that a very cathartic thing. In fact, I can talk about it because he's no longer with us, but I did some end of life songwriting with a friend of mine.
God.
Couple years ago. He had motor neuron disease, which is a tragic condition. And he wanted to make some music, and I actually find it quite hard to revisit some of that stuff now, but that's my journey, not his. But in terms
revisit the songs that you created.
It's quite powerful stuff. And I think it's a voice sometimes that it enables you to, songwriting in itself, it gives you a voice that other formats don't enable you to do. You can have conversations with loved ones in a way that you wouldn't normally do it. You can tell people how you feel in a way that you wouldn't normally do it. And somehow, because it's within the music, it's validated. It's not you being, oh, woe is me. It's just you expressing an idea or a feeling. Or I really like the sort of the therapeutic songwriting as a thing within my own practice. That's not all the work that we do. Sometimes it's just music making, but and we do work with other groups as a charity. We work with PMLD, people with physical conditions, people with special educational needs. We do enrichment in schools as well. Working a lot with autism these days.
Is there like a sense that I'm going to go proper? What was your phrase for the fluffy again?
Oh, foo-foo la-la.
Foo-foo la. I'm going to go proper foo-foo la-la here.
Okay.
Maybe I'll edit it out and then see what you say, and then you can be the one who sounds like it.
It's all in the edit. Oh, I know
it's
that.
all in the edit, yeah.
Yeah.
Laura just be saying, you sound crazy. Is there a sense that what you're describing there with your friend sounds, well, it sounds insanely painful, but it sounds, and forgive me if this is like the wrong thing to say, but it sounds beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And is there a sense that with all these people that you're working with, that you are, the reason why there is positivity from it is because they are taking time to make something beautiful?
Yeah. Absolutely. So yes, I think there's something very true in what you've just said. it doesn't all have to be beautiful music either to be beautiful.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So, sometimes it can be. We did a little. We do 2 concerts a year with our NHS patients. Well, we actually do 4, but there are 2 that are closed doors. So there are ones where psychiatrists and practitioners and healthcare care professionals turn up, and there's one where not many people attend, and that's because of the nature of the clients. But yeah, we did one of the concerts last week, and there was a woman singing who, I don't mean to be rude, but she's not a great singer. But what it meant to her to be able to express herself in that way, in a public forum, singing on a microphone, standing on a stage with musicians surrounding her and supporting her, was phenomenal. It was very moving. And it didn't move me because the music was beautiful. It moved me because the activity was beautiful at that point.
Yeah. The context of it all.
It doesn't have to be beautiful music for it to be beautiful. I think that's the point that I was trying to make there. So, yeah, it's interesting stuff. And I don't know. Ask me another question. Set me off on a train of thought here, because...
Well, I think what's rolling in the back of my head from what you're and how you were setting things up when you were talking about your journey to running the trust and talking about youth work and that moment in history where there were youth centres everywhere. I mean, I'm interested by the time of when that was. But for me, I started music ed doing volunteering at a youth centre running a music workshop.
Brilliant.
And I remember thinking, wow, this is amazing. There was a real range of ages, and we had the older kids became sort of almost like mentors. And
peer mentoring
naturally.
Model. Brilliant.
And we just wrote some songs, and that people, some people stuck with it, some people dropped in and dropped out, and then that is gone, and that is just not there anymore. And I that always comes back to me in the sort of when you're having those whinging conversations with friends about the state of the country, and you're like, that seems, those things, from my experience anyway, and perhaps yours, seem so core to people being happy and people, I don't know, just having for younger people having a positive experience of life, I suppose, of having an opportunity to make music informally. And I don't know, I don't even know what I'm saying, Jamie, to be honest.
Well, there's a couple of bits within there. So I started at the beginning and said that my boss puts money in my bank account because I'm making music or helping other people make music, and what a blessing that is. I'm never going to be rich, but I have been happy for a long time. So there's something in that. And the other bit is about that sort of those opportunities that you were talking about for young people that we are sadly lacking these days. And I don't want to get whingy and too political about it, but I think I can tell you a little story as to why I've ended up earning my money from music since 1989. And that's because when I was a slightly misunderstood, slightly naughty little boy at school, in junior school, very little, my then music teacher and choir MD got me to press the reel-to-reel player so the students could walk into assembly, all the pupils could walk into assembly to the 1812 overture. So I played a reel-to-reel player. I went in first, press go on it, and then press stop, and it was that little bit of opportunity for me to be something special for a moment. Mm-hmm. She also, within a small primary school gymnasium, insisted that whenever we clapped any performances, we did it with our thumbnails. So we had like a few hundred kids doing a thumbnail round of applause. It's very quiet, but actually it's the world's smallest round of applause. She taught us to listen to stuff differently. She taught us to listen. She taught me the value of playing certain types of music. So 1812 overture, getting a load of kids marching in. It's like this.
Yeah. That must have been quite comedic.
Yes, absolutely. And she then took us on, and I sang in a choir with her as MD, and we performed at the International Eisteddfod in Llangollen. So we were competing at an international level as small children, and I stayed in that choir until I was 16 and my voice broke. I went to Wales every year and performed at an international competition. All of that stuff means that's the person I am today. That's the stuff that played into the fact that I'm quite happy to facilitate music. I'm quite happy to... There are other skills that I've learned along the way, but that's the start of the journey. I can pinpoint it to pressing go on a reel-to-reel in the 1970s. I can pinpoint it back to then, feeling okay about myself, feeling like I was important enough to do something. And you were talking about those, the opportunities that you gave people in a youth centre. We never quite know when that stuff or what the impact that stuff is. So I can give you a little bit of a story around that. I was at Purbeck Folk Festival. Folk's not my thing necessarily, but I went to help my now wife out doing some catering over there. And anyway, doesn't really matter. I was at the Folk Festival, and a man with a bald head and a big beard came up to me and said, "Jamie," and I went, "Yeah." Because I didn't recognise him. He said, do you recognise me? Of course I don't. I've worked with hundreds of young people over the years, and it's clearly quite some time since you were young. So he told me his name. I still can't remember it. It doesn't really matter. It's not part of the story necessarily. But he said to me, "Thank you." I said, "What for?" He said, "When I came as a student to where I was working," and this is in the 90s, so 30 years ago, just over 30 years ago now, he was a student, and he said, "You were always kind to me. You encouraged me." And I said, "Well, yeah, of course I did." He said, "No, you went out of your way to encourage me, and you were kind to me." He said, "I'm now headlining tonight at this place, at the Folk Festival. It's part of a national tour that we're doing. We're touring the UK in a band where I earn money making music. And it's because I persevered because you were kind to me." And I went, "Wow. What an appraisal. Thank you." Still can't remember his name, which is rude of me, I know. But we don't know the impact that we're going to have when we're working with people, especially around the arts, I believe. It really does that foo-foo, la-la stuff, doesn't it? It really touches people's lives and it makes a difference.
What about... Sorry, go on, keep going.
No, go on. No,
I told you I'd do this, and now I had that coffee.
Now the coffee's kicked in.
I'm going to have all the comments. I wish the host would shut up. But what about in the more well-being contribution of music? Because obviously what you're doing with the NHS, and you're working with people who have had really profound negative mental health experiences, and music is now pulling it together. Do you think that actually we're just societally, if that's a word, just missing that incidental music making within our lives, be it schools, be it culturally, as we all live more? Right now I'm sat in a very suburban house that I can't really get to a community art space without getting in a car. This kind of this sort of thing. What do you reckon? We're thinking bigger stuff here beyond.
I don't know that we've, as a nation, I don't know that we've been that good at this stuff. My dad...
What you mean previously?
I think certain cultures do it much better, where music becomes much more important and much more integrated within day-to-day life.
Like samba bands.
Absolutely, in Brazil. I mean, music's life, in parts of the world. The Indian classical tradition as well, where it's really, really part of the culture. It's huge.
I suppose it's uncomfortably, or not uncomfortably because I feel uncomfortable with it, but in context of putting it in a conversation, quite often I don't think this relates to samba, but for Indian classical or even our musical culture, quite often it's linked very tightly to religion, isn't it? In the sense of, and that's, as we've become more of a non-religious or sort of loosely religious, I guess that's it. I was singing in primary schools. That was the sort of... I've had
the choir I was in was all hymns at assembly. Of course it was. It was, Church of England junior school. That's what it was back then. I'm grateful for it now. it's not the most exciting harmony. It doesn't really rock my world anymore. But that's the journey of a musician, isn't it? In fact, we had some Perry lessons. Some of the Perry students that the charity support or help support were doing a concert last Sunday as well. It's that time of year, isn't it, where we do the end of academic year stuff. And they had two clarinet, young clarinet players. I'm guessing 8 or 9, and they both got on stage, and one of them was about a quarter tone sharp compared to the other clarinet, and I loved it. I got right off on that.
Yeah,
it was Ode to Joy in quarter tones. Just
pushing the boundaries.
Yeah. So my journey as a musician clearly started with that classical English church music and hymns and the like. I'm trying to think. I mean, folk music is a traditional music around here, and I think we've got a really interesting, certainly not round this conurbation so much, but in London, I think there's an amazing young jazz scene as well at the moment, where there's some incredible stuff happening.
Yeah, for sure, man. But I'm talking about, like, normal people.
Okay.
Sat in front of the TV. Do you know what I mean? And it's just the sort of
when I ask
Brit.
young people, then to answer that question, when I ask young people what music do you listen to, some of them even say they don't. And I go, yes, you do. Yes, you do. And they say, no, I don't. I say, do you play computer games? And they go, yeah. I said, well, your life's full of music then. The scores on some computer games are amazing these days. But they're not even aware that they're listening to music, which is...
They're not actively participating,
no.
even in a listening way.
No, it's just part of their overall experience in terms of gaming. Often young people, when you ask them what music they like, they say they don't know. And maybe that's part of, again, culturally we've shifted, haven't we? It used to be that you'd save up your pocket money, you'd read the NME, and you'd go and buy Hong Kong Garden by Susie and the Banshees the day it was released in Woolworths, because that's what the newspaper had said was the next big thing, and you'd experience it, and you'd take your vinyl home and you'd play it, and you'd sit up on a Sunday night and record the top 40 and try and edit out the DJs. And we used to consume music in a very different way. People don't actively choose what they listen to now. Most young people will put on a streaming list based on their algorithms, which turns up more of the same that they're already listening to. It's not really stretching them in any way, and I'm not sure people are consuming music in the same way as they used to. How many people? I don't think they have the attention span, if I'm quite honest. How many people sit down and put both sides of an album on? Even, and in terms of streaming, I'm guilty of that. I rarely listen to a full album these days if I'm streaming. I do if I put vinyl on, but I will, if I'm streaming, I tend to let the computer make decisions for me. I'll skip occasionally and try and influence the algorithm. But listening to music is a different experience these days, isn't it? And I'm an audiophile. I've got a lovely studio, and I like recording, and I'm really excited by good quality music, and I subscribe to my chosen platform, my streaming platform of choice, because I want FLAC files. I don't want half the data missing.
Okay.
So I want all of the data there, because if you're listening to compressed MP3s, you are missing some of the data. And what's happening is the brain. Here's an interesting fact around that stuff, actually, that the brain is making up the bits of data that is missing. Mm-hmm. So your brain's not listening to music in the way it used to listen to. It's spending quite a bit of its time going, oh, that's a symbol. I need to make up the rest of the data that's not quite with it, because the top end's missing off my compressed MP3 and I'm listening to it on a phone, for goodness sake. I mean, it's not a way to consume music or experience it.
But if we're as a society, if we're consuming in a more detached way, if we're listening in a more detached way, and we're participating less, it's just crazily less, isn't it? Really, it's just is that having a profound effect? Is the people that you're working with, as a generalized experience, are many of those people coming to you and they already access music, or are you usually like this is their sort of a relatively fresh experience to them.
I think there's a big difference between accessing music making opportunities, which means playing something or being part of a group of musicians, even if it's contributing with some lyrics or something to a creative process. I think that's very different from just sitting at home and listening. I think quite often the guys that we work with already enjoy listening to music. Some of them used to enjoy performing music, but don't feel they're confident enough to do it anymore, and we rekindle that love. So we had someone recently who hadn't picked up a saxophone for something like 12 years. She now regularly plays sax every week and does a fantastic job. So there are I think it's different listening or actively engaged in music. I think music making opportunities aren't perhaps the same, and dare I say it, even in terms of listening to music, I won't mention who it was, but there was someone I wanted to go and see recently at the Lighthouse, a quite unusual artist to get down, and it was a poorly attended gig, but the people who went have all reported back to me that was a profound thing to listen to.
Right.
Unfortunately, I couldn't go the night that they were on in Poole, and I'd bought tickets to drive to Bristol, drove there with my wife on a hot Sunday afternoon in that heat wave, and Bristol city centre had been shut down because the venue where we were going had a gas leak in the car park.
No!
So the event never... So all these people are now telling me how amazing it was, the gig I couldn't go to. But I don't think we expose ourselves to that sort of thing very often. Big orchestral works, loud jazz, crazy avant-garde music, big rock bands, outrageous energy with a punk gig. I don't think people are going to this stuff because, well, as you know, the venues aren't there anymore, and it doesn't seem to be supported in quite the same way as it used to. So I think even exposing yourself to that stuff is less than it used to be. Maybe you've hit on something. Maybe it's not just it's deteriorating from lots of angles. And actually, I don't know. I know lots of people who love their music and are hugely passionate about it and go to extraordinary lengths to make music and be involved in it. But as a bigger society thing, maybe we're not doing it as much as we used to. I don't know. I really don't know.
It always feels like it's interconnected in some way, isn't it? Especially in music ed, so often it's the conversation about just a school or whatever, and it's not. Well, no, it's what's exciting about these podcast conversations is that it's an opportunity to sort of zoom out. Do you know what I mean? And go.
Certainly, my experience over the years is there are less music teachers in schools. Which gives charities like ours the opportunity to offer. You know, I meet some alternative provision schools and do enrichment for them, which then ticks their Ofsted box. Whether I agree with the morals of that is neither here nor there. At least we're still giving these young people an opportunity to access music making, and their behaviour changes quite often. When they access music. Quite often it's reported back that this is very much the case actually over the years that I've been involved in informal education, that people's behaviour changes when they start to regularly engage in music. They seem to be a little calmer, a little better, a little more focused. It does something that it's that foo-foo la-la effect, isn't it? It does.
Because can you explain why that is? I guess you can't, right?
There are some scientific reasons why it is, but I think it's more than that. It's that emotional connection. It connects the head and the heart. That is, that's quite profound, isn't it? In a world where, I mean, we used to have a lot more religion, and we're now more spiritual than religious. It somehow music is a bridge with all of that stuff quite often. You know, why is it the music that we sung was religious? Well, that's because people who were religious thought that was a good vehicle for communicating things, and you know, it's always been the case. This is an example I give. I don't know if anyone's ever gone away and done it, but if you've got a film that makes you cry every time you watch it, it's a classic film that might make you cry. If at the point you normally cry, you substitute the music that was playing with the Benny Hill music, I guarantee you won't cry. It completely changes the mood of whatever you're watching. So it is that stuff, isn't it? It's that emotional stuff that music's the stuff that moves us.
You can explain it with those real time explanations
Yeah.
of the situation. I like. There's a sort of I presume it's a famous saying that explains why us being in nature is so important. And that's simply, well, if you want to understand how important nature is to you, try and live in a house without any windows. And it's just fantastically simplistic, because I can't explain to you why I need to be able to see some trees or see outdoor life. And I think same as music, try and live in a world without sound.
So it's a bit like we can sleepwalk through life, can't we? If you don't notice things or you don't hear things. So if, like you said, the whole nature thing, it's like, have you ever seen trees? No, I mean, no, like, really, have you seen trees? I mean, they are amazing. And it's that we can walk past trees for decades and sometimes not always notice. And I think the same can happen with music. I think it can pass you by sometimes. But when you do get a piece of music that makes the hairs on your arm stand up or gives you goosebumps down the back of your neck or whatever it is, when it moves you, it's extraordinary. I share that with people when I'm doing workshops. I don't mind saying, there was a thing that happened, love him or hate him, Jacob Collier put a thing out a little while ago where he was performing live in a church with allegedly just a load of fans. I think they were singers, but allegedly a load of fans. And he conducts them in the way that he does, and they sing some harmony parts. And as far as I could tell, the lyrics were kind of about mental health. And I sat and watched it one morning after I'd had my breakfast before I went to work. It just came up on my YouTube feed, as these things do. And I sat and watched it. And before I knew it, I had tears running down my face. I found it profoundly beautiful as a piece of music. And I don't mind sharing that with people. And one of the things I try and do to help people who have this sort of disconnect, as I might describe it. So if I'm working with people who say, I don't know what music I like and I don't know what I listen to, I'll play them things that might push the boundaries. And often I'll accompany it with a video, a YouTube thing. So I might play them Steve Vai playing Zombie Wolf. Zappa plays Zappa because he showboats this incredible solo. And they might really hate it. And they might sometimes after a minute of it say, turn this off, it's too much. But that's okay. That's evoking a response. It's if that's your response to it, that's okay. There's no right or wrong with this stuff. Equally, I might play them. Who's the guy who's been doing the Stand By Me thing, the cover? I can't remember his name. Anyway, there's and Mike Love doing his loop pedal stuff. A reggae artist from Hawaii, who does this incredible thing where he loops over quite a long period a whole phrase, but he does it syllable by syllable. So he builds it up by syllable. Check it out later. Fantastic piece of music, truly inspirational. And then the young people go, I'll go, stick with it, focus. It's about 2 minutes long. Focus. Just stick with it. And by the time it gets to the end, they go, oh my God, look what he's done. And it's just a loop pedal trick. It's nothing amazing. But for young people, sometimes they're blown away by this stuff. So I try and get people to listen to music they wouldn't necessarily listen to if they're not exposed to much at all. Just
to try and get them to connect. Basically.
See how they feel about it. Yeah. And I'll play the Jacob Collier thing, or I'll say, look, this made me cry. How does it make you feel? And sometimes they'll go, well, it was beautiful, or it made me sad, or it made me optimistic. It's just that head and heart stuff, isn't it? But I think sometimes, certainly with young people, they're worried about what their peers think. They're worried about what everyone else thinks. I heard a young person say a little while ago that birth rates are dropping because young people don't dance anymore. And the reason they don't dance anymore is because they're worried that they're going to be videoed and shown on social media. What a bizarre place to have reached. Where people are afraid to dance to music. I'm not a great dancer. I've always been a bit afraid of dancing, if I'm honest. But yeah, young people don't dance, therefore they don't meet people. They don't,
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I wouldn't have wanted to dance with the threat of someone.
But 5 pints in, I bet you've thrown a few shapes back in the day. So
I danced all the time, but absolutely terrible. And remain terrible to this day. But never think about
But what an extraordinary place to get to for people not to do it, even if they're drunk, because they're worried about being filmed and then that stuff being shown on social media. And I think that's the response that I'm sort of, the reason I said that is because that's the response I'm getting quite often when I say, what music do you like? And they go, well, I don't know. Well, it's almost like you're afraid to have an opinion these days. And yet the media's full of opinions and very little fact. Strange, isn't it? Very odd.
Hey, that's really interesting. But then in some ways, if I can imagine even maybe when I was a kid, and definitely if I go a generation or two back, I would have thought emotional language, especially from a young boy or something, trying to describe how they feel because of a piece of music, would have been met more with, what are you talking about?
Yeah, what do you mean?
Yeah. What's wrong with it?
I don't have feelings.
Exactly. But then I suppose now, even though we might articulate that it's okay to talk emotionally, actually deep down we're all hiding it more because we're scared of that video of you having an emotional reaction to a piece of music is going to become a viral hit, or you become a meme.
What's really interesting is the adults with mental health, for the most part, know exactly what they like and are quite happy to express that and tell you and say, look, no, I want it to be like this, or
okay.
You know, in terms of songwriting, they've got really strong ideas quite often of what it should be.
Do you think that could possibly be in some cases because they are actually far more connected to their feelings than?
Yeah, maybe.
But obviously, depending on the scenario. But this idea of actually, if I'm going up and down, maybe that's because I'm actually having an emotional experience rather than just
And I think that's an age thing as well, perhaps. You know, a lot of the clients I work with aren't very young. They're sort of, you know, in their 30s, 40s, 50s.
Okay.
And I think by the time you sort of got to that age, you kind of know a little bit more what you like. Even if you might be stuck in a loop with it, you know, it might be the same stuff you really liked when you were a teenager. And there's nothing wrong with that. Although I do believe certain genres have a shelf life in terms of being, you know, when you're really young, you can be into the, you know, whatever it is, sort of heavy metal or the punk scene. That wears a little bit thin as you get a bit older. You want something a bit more sophisticated than that sometimes. Well, I certainly do. The music I listened to when I was young isn't always the stuff I choose now. But yeah, they kind of know what they want. And even to the point where there's one person I'm thinking of at the moment who I work with who loves to play guitar. He sings a little bit. He has really, really clear ideas about. No, that's not the right sound. It can't sound like that. It needs to. You need to change the sound. That's not right. And he's really specific about what it is that he's hearing in his head, and we're trying to emulate in a writing and recording session. It's very clear in his head, and that's quite a tricky place as a facilitator to be, because I'm like, well, sounds great to me, and he's like, no, it's wrong, and I'm okay. So what do we need to do to change it? What's not right about it? And then he doesn't always have the language, so we have these constant conversations about how do I make that better for you? But it's an interesting thing, you know. I don't know if you're like that when you record something, whether you hear it in your head first and then there's a sort of a disappointment with it that it's not quite what you hear, or
continuously disappointed with what I've created. It's just a constant sense of dissatisfaction, and then a little moment where I believe I'm some kind of musical god that lasts for about 5 minutes and then quickly crashes down to being completely useless. And is there future wise, do you think, I don't want to paint like a dystopian sort of societal image, but it's so immensely positive what you're doing, and quite often I have the pleasure of speaking to wonderful people like yourself who are doing an immensely positive thing to do with music and having an impact on society in a positive way. Quite often there is this theme that the music is an antidote to an antidote to modern life or modern experience and existence. Do you think there's a sort of a bit of a dystopian future where, walking amongst the trees and playing music is becoming even though we're starting to see its value, it's becoming this sort of like, oh, what you need is some music. Oh, what's that? Well, it's this thing we used to do decades ago.
They used to do it.
And when we were happy. Happy? What's happy? Oh, sweet. Do you know what I mean? It's quite interesting in the sort of language that it comes about. I think if people like you and I, who and all the listeners of this podcast who deeply, deeply believe in the power of music and how wonderful it is, but so often it's like a novelty, isn't it? It's in this to so many people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's quite a big question. I think the future looks strange in some respects. I mean, we are actively pursuing well-being, creative arts, being at the centre of health and well-being, and I believe that's important. It's not rocket science. We should have been doing it forever. It seems to be the direction of travel, but within that, we've got a world where, and I'll make a point in a minute about it, that we've got AI creating music. We've got people who say they're creating music, but they're writing prompts. We've got all this other stuff. So the way in which we're living, the sort of antidote to the AI world and the algorithms of social media and all the sort of like the ills of the world, the antidote seems to be music. But within that, music's now moving into this AI generation sort of, I don't know, I think it's really interesting. But within that, I do know that there are young people, that not necessarily the disengaged ones, the ones who are more actively engaged in music, who say things like, well, I like this sort of music and I will never listen to anything produced past 1994 because that's when auto-tune came in. And, and I'm like, well, okay, I think standards. When the Cher record happened, they stopped listening to any music that was created because they found that was irritating and cheating. Likewise, I think there are some people now who go, well, that's just AI music. I don't listen to that. I only listen to Supertramp or whatever it is, and I'm like, oh, okay. That's quite cool. So I think within that, I think there's this sort of going to be this divide still, whatever that looks like. This sort of like people who go, oh, there's nothing wrong with AI music, and all the purists who go, well, that's complete nonsense. It's got no soul. It can't have. And it can only, anything that's generated by AI in terms of music can only be, because it's a large language model that's learnt from what's gone before, can only be, and here's the argument, anyone who's creative is only ever regurgitating ideas that they've learnt from somewhere. So, but it's how we put them together. I think it's that might be that might be the difference. How close is AI going to get to real creativity? I don't know. But I do know that there are people who are very strongly against it in terms of music making. I know people who are also going, well, I just put one of my songs into it and tell it to make it better, and it's okay. I don't know where I stand on all that stuff. I ventured very quickly into a little realm a few years ago of using some AI vocals to get girly singers to be backing vocals for me, and then I stopped. I went, no, this doesn't feel right. This is horrible. I don't do anything now that uses AI in terms of music making. Not even lyrics, because it just doesn't feel right.
But you said you weren't sure where you sit with it, but then you're obviously quite.
But yeah,
you're not using it.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not using it.
But why not? Why not? Like why?
I use it to write bids to get money in for the charity. AI is fantastic at certain things. It's a really good tool. I'm not, but in terms of being truly creative, and even then, I write the copy and go, "Can you just tidy this up and make it a bit better?"
For sure.
That's different from going, "Can you write the bid?"
But what's wrong with? I am fascinated by this, man, and we've had like loads of episodes about it. And what's cool about it, as well as every week it's different. But what is wrong with it? I really think is the question, because I see the backlash tends to be more based on it's not as good because so much work hasn't gone into it. This sort of cultural thing that often European friends have pointed this out as quite a British extreme within extreme within British culture of, there must have been some kind of suffering involved. Do you know what I mean? To have the value is
the art.
Yeah.
I bleed for my art.
Even if you said to someone, how was your week at work? It's like, well, actually, I just did as little as possible to get paid. So what? You didn't suffer? You've got to work. And I sometimes feel that is the reason people are so negative towards it, because there's no, it's easier. But I had quite a profound experience.
I think it's more complex than that. I think it's more nuanced than that. I do think so. We've coined the phrase "foo foo la la" a bit today for that.
That's the title of the podcast.
That head and our heart connection, that spiritual aspect of music making, and I think no matter how good an AI creation is, it can't possibly have tapped into that bit through the creative process that is still the head and the heart connection. That foo-foo la-la, the bit that we can't quite describe, the stuff that makes the hair stand up, the bit that makes you cry at a film, all of those bits that we talked about, that's the stuff that it can never quite tap into. No matter how good it is and how many bits of music that it listens to for its inspiration, I don't think it can do that human element, which is the bit you can't put your finger on. What makes that?
I agree.
The song yesterday, or whatever it is. All right, okay, you might not like it, but
no, I love it. But then I think because I do agree with you, but I wonder whether actually
it would do a great job of writing yesterday now, because yesterday's been written. It won't come up with the next thing. It won't come up with Under Pressure, David Bowie and Queen. It won't come up with yesterday. It won't come up with Good Vibrations or whatever. It won't come up with the next new thing, because it's learning from what's already gone. And that's that. I don't know, maybe it won't. You seem cynical with my cynicism.
I'm becoming more and more cynical of it, and that. So I got two experiences to share for discussion purposes, because I'm excited by this. I'm excited by your honesty on it as well. One is for this podcast. When we did the big AI episode, I used an AI generator for the theme music as a one-off, as an experience,
and it'll do a reasonable job.
It did, but I tried to do something as original as possible, because I was like, that's the challenge. Yeah. And if I'm honest, I really enjoyed doing it, because I was basically being producer. Do you know what I mean? I was like, do it like this. No, do it more like this. Do it more like that. And what came out, I thought was pretty good. And I obviously had to put it back to the music that I'd created sort of reluctantly. But, I do feel what came out was quite original. And my other experience to throw into that, for you to feed back on, is there's a website where you can see what music has been scraped and put into different data sets, and you can search for your own music. Yeah. And my own music was in there as something that had been scraped. I think that's the term. And I was, unlike an artist of stature, I didn't then make a social media video going, someone's taken my music. What is that? Yeah. Because I was like, oh, cool, someone had scraped my music. But what it had scraped is it had taken a track of mine, which I called I'd Rather Be. And I'd Rather Be, I wrote as a tribute to an artist that I love called John Martin. He has a song called I'd Rather Be the Devil, using something called an echo.
I know the song.
So I tried to emulate him in this track. Interestingly, that's the track that it took. So it's taken, I was kind of being an AI, because I was trying to sound like John Martin. But the difference is, I think that in some ways I tried to emulate John Martin, and it was a homage to him, but actually it sounded nothing like him, and it sounded like something different, because I'm crapper than the AI. Do you know what I mean? It's like through my mistakes I created something original.
But that isn't that the glory? John Martin word, but isn't that the absolute glory that you can't take you out of your creations?
Yeah, however hard I tried, even though I saw that as at the time, I was like, "Oh, does it sound? It sounds like '90s rave rather than John Martin." But now I'm like,
of course you don't sound like John Martin, because John Martin sounds like John Martin.
And an AI being like John Martin can sound like John Martin.
Oh, yeah, they can do a much better job than another human being, because they're just, it's just sort of plagiarism, isn't it? It's just sort of like identifying which bits make up. And no matter how hard you try, you can't take you out of what you do. If you're singing, you sound like you. If you're playing, you play like you. If you're recording, it's going to sound like you because of your production. And I know that from my own production. No matter what I do, and I've done albums for other people. I've done lots of bits and pieces over the years. I can always tell that it's me that's produced it, because it sounds like a Jamie King production.
But do you, deep down, and particularly more in the past, did you almost always see that as a negative because you were trying to sound more like Rick Rubin or whoever?
Yes. Sometimes I did, and I'd employ session players to sing songs I'd written because I thought they'd do a better job. But actually, I've reached a point in life now when I'm at the ripe old age of 61 where I don't care. I just don't care. I will sing my own songs, play all my parts, do my. It's like I feel like Prince. I'm just sort of like this, It's sort of crazy, like, this is my stuff. And actually, I think it's better for it. And that's just a growth thing. That's just yes, of course, we all have imposter syndromes when we're younger, or we don't think we're worthy enough, or it doesn't sound quite like what we wanted to achieve, or, you're inspired by a certain thing and you go, well, that's how I need to sound. And when you try, it doesn't quite work. All of that stuff has been part of the journey. But now I'm like, I do what I do, and that's great.
Do you think, because so much of music education in some ways was particularly focused on trying to emulate and trying to do something in the style of, do you think actually now it's time to let go of that stuff and go, no, let's double down?
In terms of education, I'm a big fan of informal education. I don't believe that we've taught music necessarily the right way. I mean, I had my knuckles wrapped when I didn't do my finger exercises properly on the piano. That was proper formal education. Ow! It wasn't necessarily the best way to teach me. I don't think that elicited the best response from a young Jamie. And more so in terms of the sort of the dot reading, the not using your ear stuff so much to start with, that sort of comes as a secondary thing. I think we should be teaching people to listen to music and respond to it, and not go, well, that's a bad technique. I don't think there is such a thing. There's so many examples, in terms of musicianship where, guitarists or keyboard players or whatever it is, doesn't matter what instrument it is, will do something that's technically not very good in terms of what what we're being told is the right way to do something, and as a result they create something that's fantastic. But I think is it Raoul Meaden and Jeff Healey, two people I can think of who are blind, who play the guitar in extraordinary ways because they couldn't see how other people held them.
Okay.
So you give a guitar to a blind person, they're not going to sit there and have their hands in certain positions. They're going to strum it and listen and, have a fiddle around. And both of those guys have developed extraordinary techniques that are entirely their own. So this idea that we have to teach things in a format, in a certain way to get to an end result, in my opinion, is just crazy in terms of music. Give a young guy a guitar, say, make some noise. See what happens. The same with drumming or whatever it is, and be happy to experiment with things like dynamics before we get into that's wrong. Let's all start off being really loud and see how quiet we can get. Let's do this stuff. I love informal music teaching. There is a place for the techniques and getting stuff right, but I don't think that's the way to start with. Certainly with young people,
it's very hard to measure that, though, isn't it? And to measure that progress and success. Do you think that's maybe why that doesn't?
Yeah. Because we're always looking to. It's a bit like we're always looking to get exams and results and measure things in a certain because of measurements. But that's why we try and go down that. It's like forcing things into that way in terms of education. I don't necessarily think that's the best way to get the best out of people, or the I use this phrase quite a lot. I just say, remember, folks, music can be fun. Because after a while, it gets a bit serious. I was talking to a musician today, actually. When I left work earlier, coming home to do this podcast, and he's a musician who's reached a point where he's playing a lot with a lot of named artists. He's doing, he's industry known. He's up there doing the stuff. And he'd come in today and he was having a jam with a friend of mine and they were just making noises again. And he says, I never get to do that anymore. It all has to be learn the part, play it as written, never do it any different. It's all very much about regurgitating what it is that people need to hear. And he said, it was just so much fun. I spent an hour just making some noises today. It was great. And I think there's something in that. Maybe we lose that fun element sometimes with music. If we try and teach young people, you've got to do it this way and you've got to read the dots. Dots isn't where it's at for me. Harmony's where it's at, and understanding what those sounds like, what things sound like.
For what end? Because I'm presuming this person that you're talking about is a session player.
Yeah.
So they would, in the terms of a music education conversation, we would go, well,
they read charts, they read dots, all of that stuff.
Top success. You're making money out of music. You're able to do all these skills.
Yeah.
But then here comes Jamie with his crazy ideas saying he should have just been making some noise. So what, you know what I mean? Like,
well, that's again, that's a value judgment on whether or not that's successful. That's to do with the fact that he's making money from it. Is success making money, or is it actually having fun? Is it contributing to life? Is it living well? Is it, that's a value judgment. I'd argue that.
Beautiful.
There's no right and wrong, but I'm just saying, if you judge everything by how much money someone's got in their bank account, that's not necessarily the way to measure it.
Amazing. Thank you.